Victor has been shot, and saving him will require Pride to make some very dangerous choices. And we learn more about the events leading up to Amy's death, how Alex was involved, and how that truth may cost him his future with Nico. It's Marvel's Runaways, Season 1, Episode 8, Tsunami. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to our review of Runaways, Season 1. So yes, spoilers are a coming. Alright, so Episode 8, Tsunami, picks up right where the last episode left off, and that is Victor bleeding in his garage, heading right towards death, forcing Pride to sort of come together to try and save him. And I really found this whole sequence very interesting, very cool. I mean, first, we're learning a little bit more about Pride as a group. The emergency text goes out. Wilder's the first to get it, who noticed this one-word text, very important. Last time they heard that, that's when the Hernandezes died. The Yorks also getting this text, unfortunately right as they're trying to drop Molly off over at Graciela's, saying, oh no, it's so wonderful here, look, it's so many crosses, it's amazing, but, let's try and make this a smooth transition. No, oh my God, we got a text, we gotta go, bye. I mean, come on, you want to make someone feel more secondary, you get a text and you run out with a quick little goodbye. But that text note they get, Tsunami, which I guess is the Pride emergency alert system right there. Well, basically we start getting everybody together to try and save Victor. Not much the Wilders can do in that sense. The Yorks, yes, they are doctors, but not medical doctors. So the best they could do is maybe stabilize Victor for a moment. But the real interesting choice gets when Leslie arrives and decides to bring in Frank. Frank, of course, who has the magic gloves of Jonah to see if he can go in and heal. And there was a moment where we were thinking this might just clear everything up. But no, it kills Victor instead. Talk about going in the opposite direction. And I'm curious why it worked this way. I mean, is it just that Frank doesn't really know what it is that he's doing here, that this is all new to him and he hasn't sort of figured things out? It's one thing to try and heal a dying man of some disease. It's something else to stop an impending bleeding gun, a gunshot and stuff. So is it a traumatic situation here? Is it that Jonah might, Jonah feels that Victor is the only one of importance here, so it's not like his gloves shouldn't have worked. By Jonah's will for Victor to die. But it certainly puts things in a very darker position. And as much as Pride is trying not to let Jonah know, because Jonah already thinks that they're a problem group, shall we say, Jonah, of course, does figure it out. Tina is, I guess, the big communicator, and with Jonah is the one sort of letting things out. So that's the one who lets Jonah know. And in driving in, the whole drive-in sequence I thought was all super creepy too. Just cool, quiet drive-in, just pulls right into the garage, just gets out, looking down at the bleeding body, like, oh, so glad that you guys called me. But he's got a plan, because as we said, apparently at this stage in the whole Pride plan, Victor is the most important person. Why? We don't know yet. We don't really have the specifics. He's the technology guy, so perhaps that's what Jonah needs right now. But yeah, it definitely puts everybody else, though, in a bad spot with like, yeah, Victor's important. None of the rest of you are. We could lose you. In fact, we're going to have to lose one of you in order to save Victor. A person responsible will have to take out Janet, his wife. will sacrifice her in order to save Victor. And I have to say, the best scene of this whole episode was the back and forth between all the Pride members talking about who is most important and who can be sacrificed. Was just awesome. It's like, I'm more important, you're not more important, I've got to do this thing and you're just a housewife. And I mean, it was just, it was a hilarious scene. I mean, dark, but hilarious too. I mean, this isn't a group that is bonding together to try and find a solution. Each of them willing to sacrifice anyone else in order to save their own butts. Which I thought was just, it was kind of appropriate. It's an interesting little fracture of the whole Pride group. But Jonah, of course, not really caring necessarily who goes at this point. I mean, yes, he had said that Janet's the responsible one and she is the one that should go. But she certainly doesn't want to go. She doesn't want to leave her kid, first of all. And that's the other thing that Jonah sort of brings up is, look, one of you has to go. I don't care which one it is. Because if you don't and Victor dies, I'm going to kill all of you and your kids. Which really puts everything, I think, very sharply into view there. And of course, who kind of steps up here unexpectedly is Robert. In the midst of all this arguing, in the midst of all this finger pointing, it's Robert who pretty much just stops up with the gun and is like, I'm going to go. I mean, he loves Janet. He still loves Janet. He's not willing to let her sacrifice and lose the kid. And I think also Jonah's threat there of kids, he is concerned about Nico too. So, I mean, it's kind of a whole double thing here. I want to sacrifice myself for the woman that I love and protect my kid at the same time. So while Robert's willing to sacrifice himself for the woman that he loves, Janet, the woman that loves him, his wife, Tina, not willing to let that sacrifice go through. So with a wave of that staff, boom, casket gone, destroyed. Not expecting that. I don't think anybody was expecting that. And what surprised me is that Jonah didn't seem to get mad here. It would have affected that he would have lost it, would have lashed out at Tina. Something, I mean, again, said that Victor's the only one that's important here. Anybody else could go. And yet, when this happens, he doesn't. He just sort of wraps Victor up and is like, okay, well, we'll sustain him here. We'll figure out another way to do this. So really kind of surprising with that sort of fallout. And also kind of a cute scene between Robert and Tina immediately afterwards. I mean, Robert now so willing to sacrifice himself for Janet now has the casket destroyed by Tina, who obviously was risking a lot in order to do that. Could have been the face, could have caught all of Jonah's wrath right there, or at least named to be the sacrifice in order to do that. I mean, could have gone multiple different ways. But I think seeing that really puts Robert in his place. I mean, Janet had already kind of, again, shut him down, didn't want him. You know, so he's sacrificing himself for somebody who doesn't want to be with him, and then sees somebody willing to risk Jonah's wrath in order to save his life. So it was just sort of a great scene where we have just a very humble Robert just coming up to Tina, the conversation in Japanese. I don't know what was said. I don't speak Japanese, but just the energy between them. There's some healing going on right there. So I mean, as much of the chaos and craziness that is going on, both with the Pride and the kids and everybody else, we might be having a little healing, a little positive relationship action going this way. So, I mean, it's something. Now, as for the rest of the kids, well, Chase, obviously, huge effect watching his dad dying downstairs and just being pushed away. Seeing, Pride not being able to hide so much that they're not just a group for fundraising, but there's definitely a lot more involved considering Shot Dad ends up getting all the Pride members pulled up. Does start to reach out for friends. Love that he tried to call Gert first, who of course at that stage was down in the dinosaur basement because she didn't want to be alone by herself, and Molly's already gone. Does get a hold of Carolina, who turns around and calls Gert to get a ride over there. And again, I love this sort of perfect sussing out of Gert noticing that, why are you calling me? Because maybe you don't want to be with Chase by yourself because you're not really into him, you're into Nico. I mean, again, sussing out all of the relationship stuff very well, and also then realizing that Chase had called her first. She didn't pick up the phone, but that sort of changes that whole relationship dynamic going on there. A little more options happening. And it's clearing out some of the tension that we had between Carolina and Gert before, which, like I had said, I didn't really appreciate. We also have a little confrontation in there with, or a discussion between Carolina and Frank, asking about what pride is. And we also got a little instance when Frank had gone down into the basement, we did get one little line dropped, which I thought was quite interesting. Well, they asked is he back into pride? Which sort of implies that Frank was part of pride at some point. We know his memory got wiped, probably after seeing Jonah and Leslie together, and that sort of had a permanent effect on him. And he seemed to have implied that pride was always one of Leslie's things, it wasn't one of him. But with this small little line drop, it does sort of seem to imply that he had been part of pride and then wasn't afterwards. So a little bit of interesting information, and might explain the stronger Jonah-Frank connection that seems to be developing here. Now, while this episode didn't open up with a flashback as many of the past episodes have, there was a whole flashback sequence in this episode, pretty much dealing with Amy and her investigation into her mom, or more specifically, Alex's connection to that investigation. As we know that Nico has been pushing Alex about how he knew her mom's password ever since the whole Pride Gala thing. Is not buying that he guessed it, is not buying that Tita's password is password, and has not let up ever since. So at this point, Alex pretty much has to sort of, let her know what he knows, sort of reveal this back information, something that he has been scared to do because of the consequences. Knowing this and not having told Nico about it might have, and I think a very real fear right there, as his revelation does cause kind of a huge schism between him and Nico, which pretty much splits their relationship totally apart. What we've got here is that Amy, of course, was the one that figured out Mom's password and gave that to Alex. Amy had been trying to figure out what was going on with her mom, breaking into the mom's servers to try and get some more information. However, Alex helps her find out that her computer had since been hacked. Keystroke generator, which means that pretty much everything that she types, every key, every word, every letter, everything is being sent back to another server. Her mom has already figured out that she was breaking in, and this leads to a whole little confrontation between her and Mr. Kincaid, who pretty much tells her, look, you're going to have to suss this out with your mom. I could tell her, but you should tell her of what's happening here. Sort this out. Which is just basically a big whole panic sequence. And certainly once Nico sort of hears this whole thing, like I said, that splits her between her and Alex. And I understand where Alex is coming from. He was scared. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how she would react. And since Nico has pretty much sort of withdrawn herself and gone from just being a regular little girl to being the whole goth sequence, kind of hiding and pulling away over these past 2 years, it's kind of understandable how that whole discussion may not have happened. However, as the general rule is, and with most shows, is that secrets only cause damage. It certainly does. And like I said, this pretty much splits Nico and Alex's whole relationship. Now that does send Nico into a quest for Amy's backpack and phone, which were never recovered. The hard drive was wiped, but the backpack and phone were never recovered, which she is able to do inside of Amy's old room. And I have to say, I like the fact that the phone was dead. That she has to plug it in, that she has to charge it. Because after 2 years, that damn phone shouldn't have a charge. And again, it's a small little thing, but I appreciate that. I mean, one sort of drags things out of the reveal and so on. I mean, you know, just from a screenwriting standpoint, it just sort of makes sense to not necessarily have this information readily available. But it's also tints into reality, which I did appreciate. Now, what we do find out is that she does get a warning. She does get found out, and she gets a warning text. He found out, get out of the house. Now, again, we're playing the pronoun game here a little bit. You're not hearing exactly who he is, and this is an unknown number that's texting her, so she doesn't really have that much. But it does explain that she's the one that wipes her hard drive to try and get rid of that information, packs a bag, packs her backpack, ready to get out of there. But unfortunately, she does get caught, and that seems to have been exactly what has led to her death. Now, of course, we do have Alex having finally broken through the server software code himself, and is finally able to take a look at the file that they've been trying so hard to get onto, this video file of the first sacrifice. And while it does give them proof that they need that their parents were involved in murder, Alex does say something very interesting here, is none of them seem to be very willingly associated with this. They didn't like seeing this. They didn't want to necessarily be a part of it. So in a way, he's saying that, yes, they're guilty of accessory to murder and certainly later on serial killing themselves. But at least in this tape, in the very first instance, they seem to be unwilling participants. And that does sort of color how everybody starts to feel about their parents in relationship to it. One of the people, of course, reassessing that family connection is Chase, who, you know, again, had been rebonding with his dad after this whole incident. Now watching him die, all of that emotion kind of makes it understandable why he would not want to subject the parents to the law right now. That there's more information to be found about this whole circumstance, which is what motivates him to grab and destroy the computer. All the evidence they've been working so hard to try and find, it is now gone. So not only is there a split between Nico and Alex, but now between Alex and Chase, and in fact a lot of the group right now. I think what we find out after that whole sequence, we've got some people, Carolina, that wants a little bit more information about what is going on, isn't so ready to turn their parents in. We have others, Alex principally, who are still willing to do that. And now, with the evidence that they had destroyed, they got nothing, and they're back to square one. And finally, Molly's little journey this episode. Yeah, not really enjoying time over at Graciella's. I mean, kind of. Likes the food. Something different. Again, Graciella's a nice person. But what we have here is, of course, the reveal of the letter that her parents had left for her. Didn't send it over to the Yorks. Left it with Graciella in order to get to Molly, where we have the key and the note, find Elian. Elian, her elephant, who is in her bag right now. So it's not something that she has to go after, but it does force her to remember the old time that you did lose Elian at once and had to go on to the next train station. And in fact, this key that we have does look like a train station key to a lockbox. And hey, there happens to be a metro station right down the street from Graciella's place. So yeah, of course she's going to sneak out and go find it. And what is it, been like 10 years and that key is still good. They haven't swapped out the stuff. I mean, that's good. That's awesome. I'm glad that they didn't clear out any of the lockers for not being used. So Molly was able to finally find what it is her parents left to her, an old VHS tape. And I have to say again, I really appreciate Molly looking at the tape really with complete confusion, isn't like, what is this thing? Shaking. What am I supposed to do? What is this crazy thing? They're called VHS tapes. It was before DVDs. That's how we watched movies. Giant boxy things. Not as good a visual, but I mean, it's what we had. Alright, so I think that's going to wrap things up for this episode. As always, thank you so much for joining me. And if you enjoyed this, please go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, toss them down in the section below. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at Darren Jakes right here. You can press this button to subscribe and check out these videos right here. I think you'll enjoy them. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.